Hello and welcome to the Caged Canary podcast. I'm your host, Mahdi Gilbert for Before Magic, and today I want to talk a little bit about why history is important and why history and magic matters and why you as a magician, no matter what exactly you're doing in magic, even if you're a cardist, you should know the history of what it is you are involved with. And the reason why I want to talk about it is I see a huge disconnect in between the magicians coming up today and the magicians of the past. And it's sort of really ironic in a way, or I don't even know if irony is a right term to use here, but it is very sad that in the time where we have the access, such easy access to virtually more information than we've ever had in history, the more ignorant people are of history. You know, we have things available to us in magic. For example, the amazing Ask Alexander search engine from Conjuring Arts, that database, Ask Alexander. I believe the website is askalexander.org, and that has millions, millions of pages of magic available to you, and it's set up as a search engine. So if you type in a magician's name, or if you type in the name of a trick, or you type in any keyword, you will find every single reference to that has been scanned and that's in that database. It doesn't mean that you're going to be able to access it. You have to have a membership, and some things are not accessible. But you will be able to find where that is written up in that name, that keyword. And it's just crazy to me that we have these amazing resources. Another great project, although much smaller scale, but still, Dennis Bear does an amazing job with it. His Conjuring Credits website, where he tries to put down everything published in magic books, the name of the author, the name of the creator of the trick, which techniques it uses, and he tries to create a platform where you can research individual effects, you can research techniques, you can research creators. And, you know, for example, let's say you're trying to work on the oil and water plot, or let's just stick with oil and water. Let's just say you're trying to work on that plot. You can type that into the database, and it will show you every single reference that they have of it. From Marlowe to Juan Tamariz to the various methods that have been published. And that none of these projects are complete, meaning there's always more information out there, but they're so vast that you would be kind of really dumb to not take advantage of it. And sadly, I don't think many people are taking advantage of it. I know serious people who are great magicians, people who are creating stuff, who are, performing the best work in magic that we're seeing today, have memberships and are doing research on what they're creating and bringing old things that have been forgotten back to life. But most of the new generation does not know the history of magic, and it's overwhelmingly sad when you think about it. There have been so many great magicians going back literally thousands of years, but let's just focus on hundreds of years ago, the ones that we have a lot of information about. There are guys like Mike Caveney, Jim Steinmeier, the list goes on, Todd Carr, Ricky Jay, who have written these massive books about the history of magic, profiles of magicians. They've published and done so much research I'm working on the Alexander book by David Charvet. I've already read it before, but I need to refresh it because I'm doing a lecture on it for my History of Magic Patreon. So I'm rereading the book, and so much of the research in the book is from the original researcher, not David Charvet, the one who published it, but the person who was originally researching the book. His name was Roy something. I forget his last name, but he died before he was able to publish the book. But the notes he compiled were incredible, and so many of the notes he got for the book and the research that he did was talking to people who are no longer alive. So he was getting information, first-hand information from sources who knew Alexander, who were connected to that time period, and there's stories in that book that he got from people that you cannot find anywhere else in the world. Just things that are not written anywhere. You can't do a Google search for it. So the magic of history is just spread out through some of it is published. Of course, some of it is published, but so much of it is not published. I remember another project we were doing at Conjuring Arts, and I don't know what's going to happen with it, but they would collect a lot of correspondence of old magicians. And you can see these correspondences pop up in auctions and stuff. There's old letters, in between Vernon and, his friends, and you have letters from Marlowe, you have letters from Houdini, you have letters from every single magician possible. That's how they used to communicate. Everybody used to send each other letters, private correspondence. And they had a project where they would collect letters and scan them, and David Roth would transcribe them because the computer can't OCR them. They can't read the letters. So they'd get David Roth to decipher these letters, literally read them. Sometimes the handwriting was so bad, just incredibly bad. Or, it's just in a style that I couldn't make anything out of. David could read a lot of it. Sometimes David needed help. Anyways, the whole point was to transcribe them and to have them as text so we could put it into this database, and so that people, I think, in the future can read them. Of course, that's a tricky subject because that's people's private correspondence, and there's obviously legal implications to that, just releasing everybody's personal correspondence online. So I don't know what is happening with that project, but the point is there's just such a treasure chest of information, of history contained through these various sources. You'll also learn a lot from talking to the old-timers, the guys who have been around before you. Some of my best friends, one of my good friends in Spain, Paco Rodas, he doesn't speak English, I don't speak Spanish, but we somehow communicate through a mixture of sign language and French, and we make it work. Sometimes Google. But it's amazing because he's one of the guys who was friends with Ascanio. And there are a lot of guys in Spain right now who are friends with Ascanio. Ascanio did not die too long ago. He died. He died maybe a generation ago, but he didn't die, 50 years ago. But the point is, the people who did know him, the people who were friends with him, are getting older now, and they're not all around. So to have people who are around to tell you the first-hand stories of these great magicians, and guys who actually knew them, who hung out with them, who went to their houses and spent all night and day with them working on magic. The stories are incredible, and to hear about techniques and theories and all this stuff, which is sort of preserved through an oral tradition. There's definitely an oral tradition in magic, which I think the oral tradition in magic is a big part of it. There's a lot of stories that are told, and secrets that are told through speaking and communicated verbally from one person to another that are not published, and certain secrets, just are not in books and magazines. So the history of magic is sort of scattered all over the place, and sometimes you'll meet one of these people, and I'm not going to say guys because they're not all guys. Sometimes it's the wives of magicians or female magicians who have been around for a long time, like, and they'll tell you stories that you've never heard about, and things that you're like, wow, is this true? And then you figure out that it is true, and these people are telling you this story, this narrative that you've never heard before. And the saddest thing that I see nowadays is that oral tradition is getting smaller and smaller. I think it's come to the point where the really good young magicians who are in touch with that older generation, that generation that came before them, is shrinking. It's so small. It's probably, and this is a no joke of an estimate. This is pretty crazy for a whole art form, but I would say there's probably not more than 2 or 3 dozen young magicians who are really in touch with the old magicians and carrying on that tradition that I know of. Now, of course, there's people scattered all over the different countries, scattered all over the world, getting different information. But the guys who are really good that I know of, who are sort of hearing this stuff, and the weird thing is, some of these guys are amateurs, some of them are professionals, mostly amateurs though. And you don't know how long that line will carry on. I don't want to name anyone, but there's certain magicians who hear stories, and I'm like, wow, these stories should really be preserved. Someone should do something. And I just know those people because I know these people, and I know that is the end of the line. That story is not going any further, and it's not because the person who told them that story isn't going any further. It's because those younger guys have no one to tell. Like, it's because the younger generation, even the newer generation, is just totally living in their own world. They're only learning magic from the internet. They're on YouTube. They're on, wherever they are in the world. They're not learning things properly, and there's no community, there's no tradition. That's the biggest thing lacking in magic today, the tradition. A lot of it is dying. You can see the end of the line. I can see the end of the line. I see it so clearly, the end of the line of things that will be forgotten, pass away, and it's sad. It really is sad. It makes me think about a guy like Max Malini. Max Malini, who was the greatest magician who ever lived, at least the greatest close-up magician who ever lived. I mean, I don't think anyone can dispute that. The guy was incredible. Performed for all the kings and queens and royalty and presidents, and was just a phenomenon. He was incredible. And he was around. He was around about 100 years ago. 100 years ago, and you think about the massive biographies on Keller, on Houdini, on so many people. What do we know about Max Malini, who was really phenomenal? We barely know anything. We barely know anything. No one put anything down. Di Vernon wrote a book about him and his magic. I mean, Di Vernon, if you know my thoughts about in between Di Vernon and Malini, you'll realize that I don't think Vernon was the best person to write that book. I mean, I'm grateful that he wrote that book, don't get me wrong, because that's the only thing we have, but it's so sad that that is the only thing we have from Max Malini. We have I'm just going to say it, we have a garbage book from Vernon about Malini. That book is garbage. I don't care who you are. Malini deserved, a 600, 700 page book fully detailing his magic, talking about his amazing career, the stories of his life. I mean, he deserved like a 3-volume, 4-volume set. Special collector's edition. I mean, well, all we have is some garbage book from Vernon, where Vernon, most of the time, is giving away his own methods, or this is how I improve on Malini's method, and he doesn't even talk about Malini's real methods. But you think about guys like Malini, who were casualties of magic history, literally casualties. It's a travesty. I can't even imagine. Just think, what if Malini, when Malini were alive, if there was a guy like Mike Caveney, if there was a guy like Ricky Jay, if there was a guy, if there was somebody writing, if there was a guy like Jim Steinmeier, if there was somebody looking at this guy, recognizing how amazing he was and documenting that, but we didn't have it. So total casualty. It's such a shame. It's so disgusting. It's really a black mark on the history of magic that a guy like Malini was just undocumented. How does that happen? How does that happen? I don't know. I really don't know. But I can see it happening now. I can recognize that it's happening now. I can see the new generation just totally deluded in this new way of thinking, this probably the most disastrous philosophy in which every single magician can, learn whatever they want to learn, and history doesn't matter, credits don't matter. We're just going to expose magic on YouTube. Nothing really means anything. Who's Vernon? Who's Charlie Miller? Who's Ramsey? Oh, you mean Chris Ramsey? No, we mean Ramsey. The guy who created the Ramsey subtlety. I only know Chris Ramsey. It's honestly, it's a sad place to be. I mean, I won't even go to most conventions nowadays. It's just too depressing. Some magicians know about the history of magic, although, everybody has different levels, but it's something that is definitely not taken seriously. The education of magicians isn't taken seriously. People aren't proud of knowing anything. People are just blissfully ignorant. They don't even know what they're missing. And then there are some guys who I know, very young guys, very young. I don't know if any of us are very young anymore. I think we're all getting older. I'm getting older, but we're still very young, and we are very into the history. We're into reading. We're into researching, and we're finding these real treasures, and people are sort of angry at us because we're not just sharing this stuff openly. It's like, well, we're actually working for this stuff. We're trying to foster an environment where we can help produce magicians like us who are, very good and hardworking and producing quality magic, and people aren't interested. They're really not interested. I would bet whoever is listening to this, you might be lucky if there's, I don't even want to say a number. I don't know how many people are listening to this, but I know that very few people are listening to this. I mean, this is literally the Caged Canary. This is the canary that sort of fell down into the coal mine, and no one can cure him. scream. He's just sort of screaming, hoping that somebody will hear. But I don't know. Is somebody hearing him? I don't think so. I think he's just sort of yelling because that's his job, to try to warn people. But I don't know if it's actually working. It doesn't seem like it's working at all. Um, the the level of magic is just going downhill. It's totally depressing. For me personally, it's totally depressing, and I just try not to think about it. I just try to focus on my own magic, and that's why I do the work that I do through Before Magic, and just in my life, because I do think that this stuff is important, and I believe that it should have a home, and that it can have a home digitally, and no matter what the reach is, the people who really want more, who want more than just, a silly YouTube video, or, just a clown on, doing Facebook videos. I mean, you know who these guys are. I'm not even going to name them. The guys who are doing those Instagram videos, 15 seconds when they're on a beach doing a stooge, it's not even magic, a stooged reaction video on a beach with, girls and Lamborghinis in the background, and you're just like, this is what magic has become to? No wonder people don't recognize it as an art. I mean, that's sort of where we're at. But I do the work that I do because I believe it is important, and I don't really care about the mass of magicians who will just suffer and die and bring the art down with them in their mediocre performances. But there are a few guys, there will always be a few guys who are true to their art and who will rise above. And I want to leave them this and all the stuff that I'm doing as like just for what it is. I think it has value in itself. The content that I'm creating, the articles, the video, the podcast, and all that stuff. But it's also a word of encouragement, because like I can't imagine it getting worse from where it is right now, but it probably will. And no, you think I'm angry and disturbed by all this? Just give me 20 years. Give me 30 years. Check it then. I will probably be complaining at a higher degree, cuz it doesn't seem like it's going to get any better. With what you see popularized right now, it's just depressing. It really is. It's depressing, it's disgusting, it's a lot of things. But the people who I think there are people who are intelligent, and they see like, wow, this is not what magic can be. When you really see what magic can be, when you experience what magic can be, when it's a high art, when it is a refined, beautifully designed and enacted experience, it just is. It can't even compare to the shallowness of what you see presented today. And the people who do experience that revelation, that awakening, will want more, and there is more for them. That's the good news. No matter what it is we're up against, there is more out there, and the history of magic definitely is rich with treasure. It is not inexhaustible, but it is almost inexhaustible source of wisdom and knowledge. And I just hope that people can discover it the way that I'm discovering it. I'm not going to say I discovered it, but the way I'm discovering it. And it is a process of discovering every day, reading, educating yourself. You really must be in charge of your education in magic. No one's going to do it for you. That's something you're going to have to learn. No one is going to do it for you. I recently started a series on my Patreon. I don't know how long we're going to run it, because to be quite honest, all of this is so much work for me, and I really enjoy doing the Patreon, but to make it really worth it for the amount of work that I put in, I need so many more Patreons just to make it viable. Like, I'm doing hours and hours of work every month, for a few dollars. Really, I mean, I'm basically doing it for free. The money, really, I mean, the money is laughable. When you see the amount of work I'm doing, it's like, it, it really is a laughable amount. But one of the new series that I started is called History of Magic, and it is something that I'm extremely excited about. And every month, I will be doing a video, a sort of a lecture on a magician or something to do with the history of magic. And these are usually fairly well researched and contain, either videos, or it will have, slideshows, photographs, scans of original documents, all sorts of research. So I think for people interested in magic, that is something you might be interested in signing up for. It's $15 a month, and it includes the studies in magic and the book club. So it really is a good deal if you sign up on Patreon. It really is a good deal. Again, I don't know how long I'll run it. I've committed to running it for this year. But we'll see. We'll see if it expands in the future. It really depends on if it picks up. If it's just, I don't know. I don't want to rule anything out. But it is a lot of work for very little to no reward. It is a tremendous amount of work. And yeah, I mean, we're running it this year. And we'll see how long it runs for. But you should get in while you can, because it's probably the only place, it might be the only place really in magic where you can sit down and learn about history, like listen to lectures on the magic of history. I don't think there's any other place where you can do that. Technically you can, go to a magic history conference and travel, to LA, or, to an invitation-only conference, or you can go to Europe. Or either way, you're going to be spending a lot more money than what you would spend on mine. You get a lot less content. Anyways, for those of you interested, please check it out. Regardless, please read the articles, and I hope the articles point you towards books and other things which will help you in your journey in magic. I really do hope that anybody listening to this takes magic history more serious. It just gives you such a better understanding of magic on all levels. It just improves your magic. It makes you better. It makes you smarter. It just, I really can't explain how much value you get for how little you'll have to put in. You just have to put in a little bit of reading, a little bit of energy in researching, and you will come out with with a genius. You will be able to think on your own. You won't have to go on, the Theory 11 forums, or I don't know where people are going, or the YouTube comment sections. Oh, hey, how do I? I've learned this Marlowe move that I saw in this Chris Ramsey video. How do I do? What else can I do with it? You can actually, I don't know. I mean, I don't know the conversations. I don't know the level of conversations that are being had on these platforms, but from what I've seen, and by the way, it's not like I'm not completely in the dark. I've read a lot of these comments. I've looked through some of these forums, but the conversation level usually is so low that you're kind of on your own to figure things out. So you might as well have the best resources out there. And again, I don't want to disparage anybody who are on these forums or, learning magic that way. It's just, it really is a very, very, it should be a starting point. If that's where you are, it should only be a starting point. It should be like, the first 2 weeks that you're in Magic, that you're using those resources, and then you're graduating to a higher level and actually doing research through books and through talking to people and really finding out what Magic is, because those resources are really low quality. They're like the lowest level of Magic, and it's just sad to see them being talked about being greater as what they are, because they're not. The people on those platforms producing content are really, I mean, they're the worst things that have happened to Magic. I mean, you see the level of discussions, and you're like, this is not, like, this is gonna ruin Magic. This is gonna turn Magic into a joke. Just the most stupid questions, the most stupid comments, horrible advice that you'll see littering these places. Really not good for you as a magician. Not recommend it under any circumstance. Read books. Read books. Visit beforemagic.com. And if you have any questions, you can always email me, m@beforemagic.com, and I'll happily point you towards the right direction, or join our Patreon. Even if you join our book club, the lowest level, $5 a month, you get to hear about Magic books every single month as I go through a Magic book or a book by a magician, and it'll just expand your mind. You'll hear so many things that just listening for an hour or 2 hours, 3 hours, or however long it lasts, you'll walk away with a lot of leads and things to think about and things to work through. So definitely sign up. And this is not just me trying to sell what I'm doing. The reason why I'm doing what I'm doing is because there's such a big void for intelligent conversation in Magic. And it's one of the reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing. It's because I've had enough of suffering through pointless dialogue and discussions and failing information sources. I'm just trying to create a better way. I just see a void, and I'm just trying to fill that void and do a good job filling it with quality. I'm just sort of sick and tired of people filling Magic up with garbage. So I don't know. I mean, this started out about being about the history of Magic, and it sort of turned into a mini rant. I did not mean that, but history in Magic is very important. It's very important. Please remember that, and please keep that very clear in your mind as you go out into the world learning about Magic and presenting Magic. Juan Tamariz talks about it in his new book, The Magic Rainbow, which I will be getting a copy hopefully soon. It's an expensive book, $150 for one book. But it's Juan Tamariz, I gotta get it. It's a book I've been waiting for maybe 10 years. So, it's, what am I gonna do? Not get it? I have to get it. Hopefully, I don't know. We'll see if the check clears. And then I'll be able to buy that $150 book. By God, these books are getting expensive. All right, guys, and girls, have a good week, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace. 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 Peace.